So when you do a Google image search for entrepreneur, you see a lot of stuff like multi-armed businessmen running and like Steve Jobs. So all of these people are what economists, or at least a group of economists who wrote a paper about it that I read, refer to as opportunity entrepreneurs. And these are people who kind of like start out, they're like, you know what I want to do? I'm not going to go to business school. I'm not going to run dad's business. I'm going to start my own company. Way back in 1989, they did an international survey that asked people from 11 countries whether they would prefer to be self-employed or work for someone else. And 63% of Americans said, I want to be self-employed. But obviously then, and certainly not now, those are not self-employment percentages in those countries. It's like between 10 and 15% in both the US and in Canada, despite all news of like entrepreneurship skyrocketing. Most people who end up working for themselves are what economists call necessity entrepreneurs, who are people who can't get jobs doing other stuff, so they figure it out and become self-employed. I have always been someone who does things on the side that I don't get paid for, or started blogs with friends. I think that just makes me like that's my most millennial quality. And like normally I don't identify with millennials. I'm like on the old end. I like didn't have a cell phone until college. I also made these hand-drawn pie charts in my spare time. They're kind of like personal essays masquerading as visual journalism. These are all things I did, like blogs with friends. And for a while I had a GIF Tumblr that was like inside jokes about being an editor. And I did all of this while I was a full-time editor. In 2011, I was the executive editor of a magazine called Good. Making this stuff on the side was like how I blew off steam from making stuff at my day job, I guess. I don't know. 2012, I got fired with all of my colleagues because the magazine decided it wanted to be a social network. It's since back to being a magazine, but I'm not bitter. We decided that while we all looked for jobs, we wanted to make a single issue of a new magazine. And we funded it on Kickstarter, which is like a very opportunity entrepreneur thing to do. We like hit the goal we set, which was, enough to cover our production costs and to pay our contributors. It was nominated for some awards, but we barely broke even. I was sort of trying to figure out how to be a freelance writer. And while I was having that debate with myself, a friend of mine asked me if I wanted to be a columnist at The Cut, which is the sort of gender blog at New York Magazine. And then at the same time, the Columbia Journalism Review had seen that GIF blog I made with jokes about being an editor and asked if I wanted a column there too. And so with a couple of other little pieces of work, I was like, okay, I can make this work for a little while longer. Anyone who's ever been a freelancer knows that there's a gap between the work you do and when you get paid for it, which is true, but also freelance writing is hard and is not super well paid. There's sort of like an elite group of people, I think, who are not on staff anywhere and manage to command high enough rates that they can pay their rent. It's 2013, and I was like, I think I should start an email newsletter. So I sent an email to my friends and to a few work contacts and said, I'm going to make a thing, please sign up. Also, I had been an editor, and I remembered what it was like to have a really good assignment, but then not be able to think of the right writer. You're just like, I know someone. And I figured if I could get a couple of my editors to sign up, and even if they didn't open the email, if they saw my name in their inbox once a week, maybe I would come to mind more easily. This is really where it started. There was no hi, it's Anne's newsletter or anything. It was just this. And it was like links to my own work and also links to other things on the internet and fun things on the internet and whatever. In retrospect, this garbage heap that I sent was only distinguishable because I think I continue to do it every single Friday, which a lot of the writers I know who have started newsletters don't really do. By the end of 2013, I had 4,000 subscribers. Again, shocking. 2014, give it a little facelift. At this point, it had been written up a few places, so my list was growing. I put the images of the pie charts in instead of just linking to them. And by the end of 2014, I had about 11,000 subscribers, which is again, not that much, but I'm like, okay, well, this is starting to be interesting. I could see that like more than half of these people were opening it. And this was before Twitter kind of let you view stats on tweets. But even then, I knew that this was more powerful for me than social media. I started thinking like, okay, like maybe this is something I can use to try to make some money from in a direct way. I said, do you want to pay me, basically? And the top two are pay $1 a week. The second one is pay less than that a week. People didn't want to do that. And the orange one there was make an occasional donation, like NPR style. I didn't want to do that. And then the big long bar there is put up with an ad. People are cool with ads. That's important info. And the last one was an animated GIF of like, me broke and sobbing. And it was like, they were like 20% of people were like, fuck it. Like, I don't care if you don't eat, which fair enough. I mean, like you saw what that thing looked like. So I don't hold anything against them. And so the new thing for 2014 was a podcast. The lesson there, I think, is that when you hear the same thing over and over and you're like, ugh, none of this is interesting to me, we're going to make one that is interesting to us, there are other people who are going to agree. Anyway, we start working on this. Not that many people are listening. We're making $0 off it. Okay, 2015, like really, really want to, is she, yeah, okay, good. This is my favorite. I use this for anything money related. Hypothetical questions about making money from the newsletter are going to remain hypothetical if you don't have a structure through which to like move that money. This is like a teeny tiny thing that I just screenshot, but the far left is when I first started the first newsletter, which had a couple hundred people, and then the far right is the 2-year anniversary, like spring of 2015. It has 17,000 subscribers. I got this idea to do classified ads, like the old newspaper, like alt weekly style, in part because what is the point of owning your own thing if I'm just gonna like do the thing that everybody else does in order to monetize? And they're all like, yeah, don't do that. Like no one was really into it. Anyway, but I forged ahead, I redesigned it. This is what it looks like now, so it's way better because I paid a person with design skills, learning. And then also redid my personal website, moved it to Squarespace, so I just use Squarespace Commerce now, and you can click on, like, all of these are upcoming Fridays, you can click on a Friday you want to buy an ad, and then you just get a checkout page and a form where you send me the text of your ad, and they end up in the newsletter looking kind of like this. I have to tell you, I've had like 2 personal ads, which was my dream. One of them, it was a woman who took one out on behalf of her friend, and it was like, men date my bestie, this is what she's like, she lives in New York. And another woman saw it and was like, my brother should date this woman. And they've been on like 6 dates. They had like a real love connection, which, so I don't know, that's actually my biggest newsletter success to date, I feel. There are between 3 and 6 in every issue. I made a little one-pager thing to send around. It's like, look how big my open rate is, it's huge. And like quotes from big places to try to make people feel better. But really, it's people who get the newsletter who advertise in it, which is a thing that I really, really like. There's not like a paywall. You can still get the substance of the newsletter without paying me. But I set the price so low. I'm like minimum of $5 a year. So there is no excuse. And then you can get your pie charts. There they are again, one a week, if you pay me. And I have like 1,500 paying members, which is more than out of like 25,000 subscribers. So if you are a one-woman operation, actually 1,500 paying members, even if they're only paying a little bit, like that is good. When I say, oh, that feels small, it only feels small if you have like a newsroom of people's salaries to account for or something like that. There's also a compounding effect. So this is our podcast there, like in the center. We did really well like last year. It's now one of those things where I realized at some point last year that more people are likely to know me from the podcast than from New York Magazine, which is not to say that New York doesn't have a reach, but people don't read bylines, and people who listen to podcasts hear my voice in their head. There's something about the intimacy of that medium that's been great. And I think that there is a spillover effect into the writing work that I still care about most and still make most of my money. But I do think that there is a general compounding positive effect of doing all these things on the side that are not my main gig. So obviously I made a lesson slide. First one is all of this is possible because I had an editing day job for a long time. All of this work rests on really traditional work or a career path that's been around forever. This one, like just do it every week, like be patient and be consistent, I think is so key too. That stuff, the consistency thing, I think is really important, that like if it actually is a side project, it's ongoing and people know that they can find you there. All of this stuff is stuff that I own. Like our podcast is independent and we own it. And that is important to me, and being able to say like, hey, I'm gonna make a classified section instead of do big sponsorships. People always say this do what you love thing, and I'm like, yeah, but with caveats. Like the real reason to do what you love is because people can tell when you're faking it. And then the caveat to the caveat is that, you know, it takes a long time, even when you've made a thing that people like, to turn it into money. And then the compounding effect thing, just like people finding my writing through the podcast or like the newsletter through whatever. Having like lots of different places to be is a good thing. Anyway, and here are my things. And I'm excited to talk more with these guys because we're talking about all the same stuff up here. I'm almost sorry, but I'm not sorry that you get to listen to us all like do the same side project themes. Anyway, thanks.